Welcome, history enthusiasts. Imagine a queen who rose to absolute power, ruling an island nation with an iron will, determined to keep her people isolated from the world's most powerful empires. Today, we uncover the extraordinary and often brutal reign of Ranavalona I, the formidable queen of Madagascar, whose legacy continues to spark debate. The story of Ranavalona I, often branded the Mad Queen of Madagascar, is a monumental saga of absolute power, fierce independence, and a reign so brutal it defies easy comprehension. Yet, to simply label her mad is to diminish the calculated, chilling genius of a monarch who, against the tide of European colonialism, forged a fiercely sovereign nation through terror, traditionalism, and an unyielding will. Hers was a reign of blood, glory, and an iron determination to keep Madagascar for the Malagasy. Ranavalona I was born Rabo-Doandrianum Poina Merina, around 1778, likely in the village of Ambata-Manoina, in Merina, in the central highlands of Madagascar. Her lineage was not direct royal blood, but her father, Andrian Salamanjaka, was a commoner who had discovered a plot against King Andrian Ampoinimerina, the powerful ruler who unified much of Madagascar. As a reward for his loyalty, and as a strategic political move, the king adopted Rabo-Doandrianum Poina Merina as his own daughter and made her one of his numerous wives' nieces. This act placed her within the royal inner circle, allowing her to witness the intricate dance of power firsthand. It was through this adopted lineage that she was eventually chosen by King Radama I, Andrian Ampoinimerina's son and successor, to be his first wife. Radama, a shrewd and ambitious ruler, had embraced British influence, forging treaties that aimed to modernize Madagascar's army and administration in exchange for ending the lucrative slave trade. However, Radama died young and unexpectedly in 1828, without naming a clear successor, leaving behind a volatile political vacuum. At the time of Radama's death, there were several potential heirs, including his male relatives and the offspring of other wives. However, Ranavalona, a woman of formidable intellect and iron will, swiftly moved to seize power. She formed a powerful alliance with influential Andriana, nobles, and military officers, including her loyal confidant and later Prime Minister, Ranavalona. Together, they executed or imprisoned all potential rivals to the throne, including Radama's designated heir and many of his close relatives, solidifying her position through a brutal purge. On August 1, 1828, Ranavalona was crowned Queen of Madagascar, signaling an immediate and dramatic shift in the island's destiny. Ranavalona I's reign was defined by her absolute commitment to Malagasy sovereignty and her fierce resistance to foreign, particularly European, influence. She immediately reversed many of Radama's pro-European policies, seeing them as corrosive to Malagasy traditions and a direct threat to the kingdom's independence. One of her first major acts was to expel European missionaries and traders, believing they were agents of colonial powers seeking to undermine her rule and exploit Madagascar's resources. While a few individuals were initially tolerated, by 1835, she issued a royal decree banning Christianity and ordering foreign missionaries to leave, effectively severing ties with the West. This ban was followed by a brutal persecution of Malagasy Christians, whom she viewed as traitors to traditional ancestral religion, Fombarazana, and as foreign agents. Tens of thousands of Christians were executed, tortured, or forced into slavery. Methods of execution included being hurled from cliffs, burned alive, or poisoned. These acts, though horrific, were a calculated means of stamping out what she perceived as an existential threat to Malagasy identity and control. To replace the European goods and expertise, Ranavalona implemented a policy of extreme self-sufficiency, often through brutal means. She relied heavily on Fanampona, a forced labor system where the populace was conscripted for arduous public works, military service, and manufacturing. Under her reign, Malagasy artisans and engineers were forced to build their own arms factories, cannon foundries, and even construct roads and expand the capital, Antananarivo, demonstrating remarkable ingenuity under duress. The creation of a modern-style army, armed with locally produced weapons, was a monumental achievement for an isolated nation. She maintained a massive, well-trained army, using it to brutally suppress internal rebellions and expand her empire, bringing more of Madagascar under her central rule. Her army was estimated at 20,000 to 30,000 soldiers, a significant force for the time. The costs of these campaigns, and the losses of life, were immense. Ranavalona heavily relied on the Tangina ordeal, a traditional Malagasy trial by ordeal involving the consumption of a poisonous fruit, to determine guilt or innocence in cases of sorcery, treason, or other crimes. Thousands, particularly during the Christian persecutions, died from this ordeal, underscoring the absolute, often terrifying, power of the monarch and the prevalence of traditional beliefs. This wasn't madness but a deeply ingrained cultural practice wielded for political control. Ranavalona I's court was a place of both dazzling ceremony and chilling intrigue. She surrounded herself with powerful advisors, most notably Ranavalona, her prime minister and later husband, after the death of her original husband, and his son, Ranavalona. These men formed an inner circle of immense influence, often acting as her chief enforcers. Her son, Prince Rakoto, later King Radama II, was a stark contrast to his mother. He secretly harbored pro-European sympathies, fostering clandestine contacts with French agents and missionaries. This created a profound tension at court, with the prince often seen as a counterweight to his mother's iron rule. European powers, particularly France, saw Rakoto as their best hope for re-establishing influence in Madagascar. Secret plots to depose Ranavalona and enthrone Rakoto were hatched by French agents and some Malagasy nobles, but they never materialized. The French, determined to gain a foothold, made several attempts to undermine her. In 1845, a combined Anglo-French naval expedition attacked the port of Tomasina, but was repelled by Malagasy forces under Ranavalona's command, further solidifying her reputation as an unyielding defender of the realm. The heads of the defeated European soldiers were impaled on stakes along the beach as a gruesome warning. Despite her reign's immense human cost and the isolation it imposed, Ranavalona successfully preserved Madagascar's independence during a period when much of Africa was falling under colonial rule. She was a bulwark against the expansionist ambitions of Britain and France, proving that a non-European power could effectively resist the might of the West. Ranavalona I died in her sleep on August 16, 1861, at the age of 83. Her death was marked by a massive explosion at her funeral, caused by a spark igniting a store of gunpowder, a tragic accident that seemed to symbolize the explosive nature of her reign. Her death opened the door for her son, Rakoto, to ascend to the throne as Radama II. He immediately reversed his mother's isolationist policies, reopening Madagascar to European trade and missionary activity. However, his progressive, pro-European reforms alienated many traditionalists and led to his assassination by his own nobles in 1863, ushering in a new era of political instability and ultimately, French colonial rule. Ranavalona I's legacy is fiercely debated, yet undeniably monumental. Above all, she is remembered as the sovereign who, through sheer, brutal will, kept Madagascar independent against the relentless pressures of European colonialism for over 3 decades. She was a true anti-colonialist icon, albeit one who employed horrifying methods. Despite the human cost, her reign saw the consolidation of central power, the expansion of the kingdom, and the development of indigenous industries, allowing Madagascar to function without European imports for decades. While often portrayed as a bloodthirsty tyrant, many modern historians argue that her madness was a calculated political strategy. Her ruthless purges, Christian persecutions, and the Tangina ordeal were brutal, but effective, means of maintaining control, suppressing dissent, and asserting national identity in the face of immense internal and external threats. She understood that fear was a powerful tool of governance, and she wielded it without hesitation. For many Malagasy people, she represents a period of fiercely guarded independence and cultural preservation, a powerful symbol of national pride and a reminder of a time when their nation stood defiant against the world's great powers. Ranavalona I was not a figure of conventional benevolence. She was a force of nature, a thunderclap in the history of Madagascar. Her reign was etched in blood, but also in the enduring spirit of a nation that refused to yield. She was a queen who loved her country with a possessive, terrifying passion, willing to sacrifice any life, even her own people's, to ensure its absolute freedom. The Mad Queen was, in her own chilling way, a sovereign genius, a titan who stood against the encroaching tide of empire and, for a glorious, brutal era, won.